Chapter 1: The Appointment I Shouldn't Have Made. Jonah wasn't trying to have a quarter-life crisis. It just happened. One day he was grinding through spreadsheets in a too-bright corporate cubicle, eating yogurt that tasted like ambition and hopelessness, and the next he was standing in the middle of a rental apartment he found on a forum called Rent It, Regret It, holding a cactus and crying over a cereal commercial. He told himself it was a fresh start. The breakup, the burnout, the breakdown. It was all behind him. A new city, a new life, and a new roommate who introduced herself by saying, "I don't do dishes, I do drama." Trixie was chaos in glitter boots and eyeliner so sharp it could perform minor surgery. Jonah liked her immediately. "You look like a man who's never sinned in his life," she said that first night, handing him a margarita in a skull-shaped glass. "I'm going to change that." Jonah had laughed, nervously. "I just moved in." "You've got until Friday to do one rebellious thing," she'd said, flopping dramatically on the couch. "Or I'm taking you to a club called Leather Church." He chose the tattoo instead. It was Friday night. The wine was cheap, the apartment was warm, and Jonah, 25, slightly too soft to be called skinny, glasses fogged from anxiety, typed "cool tattoos near me" into his phone. Cool was subjective. But when he saw the listing for Sins and Needles, with its all-black logo and a 5-star review that read, "Dawson could tattoo a sin onto your skin and make it feel holy," something in him sparked. He booked an appointment for Saturday at 1 p.m., then immediately texted Trixie in panic. "Jonah, I did the rebellious thing." "Did you get a hooker or a tattoo?" "Tattoo, I think." "Hell yes. Don't chicken out and wear something slutty." The next day, Jonah stood outside Sins and Needles, staring at the door like it owed him money. The studio was tucked into the corner of a graffiti-covered alley between a record store and a donut shop that smelled like frosting and poor decisions. Its windows were dark-tinted, the logo etched in bold silver lettering on the door, a coiled snake around a needle, daring you to come inside. Jonah's hands were already sweaty. He almost turned around, twice, until the door swung open and a woman with neon green hair and an eyebrow ring poked her head out. "You Jonah?" "Unfortunately," he said. She laughed and waved him in. "Come on, Dawson doesn't like people who flake." Jonah stepped inside. The studio was all exposed brick, polished black floors, and metal, the kind of place where you felt underdressed no matter what you wore. Rock music hummed low from the speakers. There were framed photos of elaborate tattoos on every wall. Dragons, flowers, abstract lines that danced like flame. And then Dawson turned around. Jonah's soul left his body. He was tall, tattooed from his hands up past his biceps in patterns that looked too intimate for public display. His black tank top clung to a frame carved from muscle and shadows. His green eyes locked onto Jonah's, unreadable but intense. His jaw was sharp, lips full, a single silver ring in one ear glinting like sin. "Jonah?" he asked, voice rough and smooth all at once. Jonah nodded. Or tried to. It came out as more of a whole-body twitch. Dawson's smirk twitched. "You look like someone dared you to be here." "That's because someone did," Jonah muttered, then immediately regretted it. Dawson chuckled, low and quiet. "You know what you want?" "I thought so," Jonah said, "but then I walked in and my soul tried to leave through my knees." That earned a full laugh. Jonah hated how it made his heart stutter. Dawson stepped closer, taking a clipboard from the counter. "Let's see what we're working with. Where do you want the tattoo?" "My wrist," Jonah said. He held it out. Dawson reached for him. The moment their skin touched, something cracked, like a jolt of static electricity, but warmer, deeper. Jonah gasped. Dawson looked up, surprised. Their eyes met. "Shit," Jonah whispered. "You okay?" Dawson asked, not letting go. Jonah's wrist was still in his hand, his fingers calloused and warm. Jonah could feel every point of contact like it was being etched into him. Static shock." "That wasn't static," Dawson said, still watching him. "You felt that too?" Jonah opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Are you flirting with me or trying to kill me?" "Why not both? I'm leaving." Jonah yanked his wrist back. Dawson let him, though his gaze lingered. Jonah took a step back and hit someone behind him. "Whoa there, Twinkie," said a voice. Jonah turned to see a man with bleached hair, tattoos up his neck, and a lip ring. "You okay?" "Maddox, don't scare the new ones," Dawson said, amused. "Jonah's just shy." I'm not shy, Jonah snapped. Maddox raised an eyebrow. You're stuttering and blushing. That's textbook shy. I'm just reacting to an overly stimulating environment. Jonah, Dawson said, stepping forward again, if you want out, that's fine. But if you want something that's yours, something bold, you'll walk out of here different. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise, Dawson said, eyes dark. You're the one who booked with me. Jonah hesitated. The tension stretched between them like heat in summer air. His heart was pounding so loud he could hear it. This was reckless, stupid, dangerous. Jonah did the only logical thing. He ran. You ran, Trixie howled, mascara smudging under her eyes as she laughed so hard she choked on her boba. Oh my God, you ran? I panicked. They were sitting on their tiny balcony with Thai food and wine. Jonah wore an oversized hoodie and self-loathing. He touched my wrist, Jonah muttered, and it felt like I was a live wire. It wasn't normal. He wasn't normal. Trixie sipped her wine. Was he hot? Jonah scowled. Obviously. Then it's okay, Jonah groaned. I can never go back there. You'll be back by Monday, she said. I won't. She leaned in, suddenly serious. You want a new life, babe? You can't just run every time something stirs your soul. I don't want my soul stirred, Jonah whispered. I want it tucked in a blanket with tea and a book. Trixie kissed his cheek. Too late for that, sweetheart. The next morning, Mrs. Langley cornered Jonah in the stairwell. She was 70, wore leopard print, and had acrylics sharp enough to slice a tire. I saw you walking out of Sins and Needles yesterday, she said, lighting a cigarette even though it was strictly against building rules. You did? That Dawson boy inked my thigh back in 2017. Still makes me walk funny when I think about it. Jonah stared. Why would you tell me that? Because, she said, blowing smoke, sometimes the things that scare you the most are the ones that wake you up. Jonah blinked. Then, why your thigh? Mrs. Langley winked. Because I have taste, darling. Now go get inked, or laid, preferably both. Jonah turned bright red, and then he laughed. Back in his room, Jonah sat on the bed, staring at the half-finished sketch he'd brought to the shop, the feather design, elegant and wild. He touched his wrist. It still tingled. He remembered Dawson's eyes, his hands, the way he didn't pull away. He remembered something else, too. The way Dawson had looked at him like he wasn't just another customer. Like he was something worth remembering. Jonah picked up his phone. Hey, is that appointment slot still open? For you? Always. Jonah took a deep breath. He'd run the first time. He wasn't going to run again. Chapter 2. He touched me once, and I can't stop thinking about it. Jonah tried everything to forget about the touch. He reorganized the pantry alphabetically. He joined a meditation app and quit it within 20 minutes. He even helped Trixie dye her hair from bubblegum pink to radioactive violet, despite the fact that he'd sworn off both bleach and chaos. But every night, his body remembered. The press of calloused fingers against his wrist. The low hum of Dawson's voice. The way the air had gone thin and sharp between them, like a struck match about to burn down something important. He told himself it was nothing. Attraction happened. Chemistry sparked and faded all the time. Just because his skin still tingled where Dawson touched him didn't mean anything. And yet, he avoided the entire 4-block radius around Sins and Needles like it owed him money and emotional stability. Are you seriously crossing the street again? Trixie asked one afternoon as they stood on the corner near an independent bookstore. Jonah pretended to be interested in a potted plant. I just like the lighting on this side. She rolled her eyes. You're dodging the tattoo booth at the fair. What tattoo booth? You are such a bad liar, she said, grabbing his arm. Come on. We're going. It's a street fair, not a death sentence. I don't want to see him, Jonah insisted, heels dragging across the sidewalk. You mean the guy who touched your wrist and made you question everything you knew about physical contact? Jonah's ears turned red. That's not what happened. I was there when you came home and tried to ice your soul, she reminded him. You want closure? Face the man. Jonah wanted to argue, but then he heard the music. The street was packed, buzzing with booths and music and the scent of grilled meat and cinnamon sugar. Strings of flags flapped overhead, children darted past with cotton candy, and couples walked hand in hand beneath paper lanterns. And there, at the far end of the street, was the Sins and Needles booth. It was black and silver and glowing with a kind of cool, dangerous confidence. Maddox leaned casually against the side, flipping a piercing needle between his fingers. A girl with blue hair sat on a stool beside him, biting her lip while he marked her belly button. And in the center, under the shade of a black awning, was Dawson. Shirtless. Jonah's brain short-circuited. Dawson's back was to them, every muscle in sharp relief as he bent over a client's forearm. His tattoos looked like they breathed with him, shifting with each movement. The phoenix he was inking stretched up the man's forearm in vivid reds and oranges, alive under his touch. Jonah stopped walking. Dawson turned. Their eyes met. Jonah forgot how legs worked. Dawson smiled, lazy, knowing like he'd been expecting him all day. He lifted one hand and crooked his fingers in a "come here" gesture. Jonah froze. "Nope," he said aloud. No. "Too late," Trixie whispered, grinning. "He saw you." And then Dawson was walking toward him. God. He moved, like he knew people watched. Confident, grounded, the kind of walk that made you forget conversations and basic arithmetic. His eyes never left Jonah's, not even for a second. Jonah had a brief, absurd fantasy that included swooning into a nearby kettle corn stand. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Dawson said when he stopped in front of him. His voice was quieter here, close enough to feel against Jonah's skin. He smelled like cedar and ink and sweat. Somehow, it was unfairly good. "I was in the area," Jonah said. Dawson raised a brow. "Avoiding the shop, though." "I wasn't okay, maybe. You always run when someone touches you." "Only when they do it like it means something," Jonah snapped, then immediately winced. "I didn't mean." Dawson leaned in. "You think it didn't?" Jonah's breath caught. The noise of the fair disappeared, swallowed by the space between them. Dawson's eyes were greener than Jonah remembered. His mouth curved into something wicked and soft all at once. "You want to finish what we started?" Dawson asked. Jonah hated how fast he nodded. The tattoo booth was blessedly air-conditioned and far too intimate for someone who still felt like his skin might combust. "Sit," Dawson said, patting the tall stool inside. Jonah climbed up awkwardly, trying to keep his knees from knocking together. "You really okay with this?" Dawson asked, voice gentler now. Jonah looked down at his wrist. It still wore the faint marker lines from the first time. "I think I need to be." Dawson smiled, setting up his tools. "Good." He took Jonah's wrist in one hand and wiped it clean. Jonah stared straight ahead, trying very hard not to make eye contact with Maddox, who was lounging nearby and clearly eavesdropping. The moment the needle touched his skin, Jonah inhaled sharply. "You okay?" Dawson murmured, leaning closer. Jonah didn't answer. He couldn't. The pain was there, sharp and biting, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was grounding, centering. Dawson's hands moved like they knew what Jonah needed better than he did. He glanced down. The feather was coming to life on his skin. Elegant and a little wild, it curved with his wrist like it belonged there, like it had always been waiting. "You're shaking," Dawson said softly. "You're touching me," Jonah whispered back. Dawson paused. Their eyes met again. Jonah's pulse thundered. Neither of them looked away. Dawson leaned in, just an inch, just enough to make Jonah dizzy. "You keep looking at me like you want me to kiss you," Dawson said, his breath brushing Jonah's lips. "Maybe I do," Jonah whispered. "Then why haven't you asked?" "Maybe I like the tension." Dawson grinned and leaned closer. Jonah's eyes fluttered shut. And then, "Hey, Dawson," someone yelled from outside. "Your next client's early." They pulled apart like they'd been electrocuted. Jonah could feel his face burning. Dawson exhaled through his nose and set the machine down. "I'm gonna kill Maddox," he muttered. Maddox poked his head in. "Don't be mad. I saved you from public indecency." "Die in a fire." Maddox winked and disappeared. Jonah tried to gather the shreds of his dignity. "So, how much?" Dawson didn't answer right away. He wiped the tattoo gently, fingers lingering on Jonah's skin. "You really want to know? Do I not?" Dawson turned Jonah's wrist toward him, showing the ink in full. The feather was complete, dark, delicate, and just a little fierce. A single streak of gold ran through the center like a spark. "It's on the house," Dawson said. "Consider it unfinished business." Jonah opened his mouth. "Unless," Dawson added, his voice rough again, "you want to pay me in dinner." Jonah blinked. "Like a date?" "Like something that ends with me touching more than your wrist." Jonah nearly fell off the stool. That night, Jonah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His wrist throbbed gently, the tattoo wrapped in soft plastic. But the memory of Dawson's hands was louder. clearer. He could still feel the warmth of him, the way his voice curled around Jonah's name like it tasted good. He turned over and buried his face in the pillow. It didn't help. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt it again. That almost kiss. The way Dawson leaned in like he knew exactly what Jonah was craving. Jonah groaned and rolled onto his back. I am in so much trouble. The tattoo pulsed against his skin, a feather, soft, wild, and permanent. Chapter 3. You don't touch someone like that and walk away. Jonah didn't mean to walk past the shop again. He really didn't. It just so happened that the best coffee cart in the neighborhood was right across from Sins and Needles. And sure, maybe he took the long way to the bookstore now, and maybe he adjusted his route to accidentally pass the shop around the time Dawson usually had his shirt off. That didn't mean he was obsessed. But Dawson noticed. Every time. One afternoon, Jonah was pretending to text on the sidewalk when the shop door creaked open. You know I can see your reflection in the window, right? Dawson called, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest, tattoos on full display in the golden light. Jonah's phone slipped out of his hand. Dawson grinned. Want to come in? Or are you planning to pace out there for another hour? Jonah hesitated, then sighed. Do you always flirt with your former clients? Only the ones who run away after we almost kiss. Jonah flushed from his collarbones up. That was an accident. Dawson raised an eyebrow. The kiss or the running? Both. Dawson chuckled and stepped back, holding the door open. Come in, Jonah. He did. He always did, eventually. Somehow they started hanging out. It wasn't planned. It never was. It just happened. Like gravity. They played pool at a dive bar 2 blocks away. Jonah was terrible at it. Even worse when Dawson stood behind him to adjust his grip. Warm breath at his ear. They grabbed late-night tacos from a truck with flickering neon lights. Jonah spilled hot sauce on his shirt. Dawson took it as an excuse to walk him home and stare at the tattoo peeking from beneath his sleeve. They sat on Dawson's bike outside the studio, helmets on their laps, just talking. Jonah learned things slowly, in bits and pieces, like peeling layers off a guarded man. Dawson didn't volunteer anything, but he answered when asked. Maddox isn't just my coworker, he said one night, idly spinning a lighter in his fingers. He's my cousin. My mom took him in when he was 8. She passed when I was 17. After that, it was just us. You raised him? Jonah asked, stunned. Dawson shrugged like it wasn't impressive. Someone had to. He's annoying, but he's mine. Jonah smiled. That explains the protective instincts. Dawson's lips twitched. That, or the rumors that I once broke a guy's nose for calling Maddox a slur. Jonah's smile faded. Did you? No, Dawson said. I broke 2 noses. The second guy got cocky. They both laughed, but Jonah's heart stung, not from the violence, but the why. Because no one who protected someone that fiercely could be the heartless flirt the neighborhood whispers claimed. And the more time they spent together, the more Jonah noticed the cracks in Dawson's armor. The way his eyes went soft around kids. They once passed a little girl selling lemonade and Dawson tipped her $20 and didn't say a word about it. The way he looked exhausted some days, shadows under his eyes, like sleep was a luxury he didn't always take. The way he always checked that Jonah got home safe. Every time. It wasn't long before Jonah started changing too. He stopped buttoning his shirts all the way up. He laughed louder. He said yes more often. The shift was slow but real, like someone wiping dust off an old painting to reveal the colors underneath. Trixie noticed. You're smiling again, she said one morning, sipping her bubble tea with a suspicious squint. It's weird. I kind of hate it. I'm just happy, Jonah said too quickly. She grinned. So it is about the tattoo daddy. Don't call him that. Why not? You clearly want to. Jonah muttered something about roommates being a curse and escaped into his room. He didn't admit how right she was. A week later, Jonah found himself at the studio again after hours. Maddox had left, locking up with a smirk and a not-so-subtle wink. The lights were low, the front blinds drawn. Dawson was sketching something on his tablet, leaned over the counter, shirtless as usual, a lazy line of ink trailing down his spine. I ever tell you how dangerous you look in this lighting? Jonah blurted, then immediately wanted to crawl into the floor. Dawson looked up, amused. You flirting with me now? Absolutely not, Jonah said. Liar. I'm not good at this. Then don't try, just let me look at you. Jonah stood there fidgeting. So, what are you working on? Dawson spun the tablet. It was a new design, smoke curling into the shape of a hand reaching upward. Jonah stared. That's beautiful. Want me to try a temporary on you? Dawson asked. Just to see how it looks? Jonah hesitated. Where? Dawson's gaze dipped low. Lower back? Jonah's breath caught. He nodded. The next few minutes passed in a blur of soft heat and rising tension. He peeled off his hoodie and shirt, heart thudding. Dawson didn't leer. He looked like he was memorizing Jonah's skin. Then he bent close and pressed the wet stencil gently across Jonah's back, smoothing it with firm fingers. Jonah gasped. Too cold? Dawson asked, voice rough. Too everything, Jonah whispered. Dawson's hand lingered. His other hand came to rest on Jonah's hip, steadying him. The warmth of his touch seared straight through Jonah's spine. Turn around, Dawson said softly. Jonah did. He was bare from the waist up, flush creeping up his chest, eyes wide behind his glasses. Dawson looked at him like he was the most fascinating thing in the world. Why do you keep looking at me like that? Jonah asked, breathless. Because you're worth staring at, Dawson said. And then he kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry. It was devastatingly careful. Dawson's hand came up to Jonah's jaw, guiding him. Their lips brushed, then pressed. Jonah melted into it, gasping softly. He gripped Dawson's arm to steady himself, feeling the muscle flex beneath ink and heat. His body lit up like the first spark of a fire. And then he panicked. He broke the kiss with a gasp, stepping back, chest heaving. I can't, Dawson blinked. Did I push too far? No, Jonah wrapped his arms around himself. You're dangerous. Dawson stared at him. Then he smiled. Soft. Certain. Not to you. Jonah wanted to believe that. He really did. But his heart was loud in his ears, and the feeling in his chest, like something was cracking open, like want and fear and hope all collided, was too much. He grabbed his shirt. I need to go, he whispered. Dawson didn't stop him, but he watched. Eyes steady, heart open. As Jonah walked out the door, both still bare-chested, breathless, and glowing from the kiss, like a man who'd been touched in a way he couldn't forget. Chapter 4. The Touch That Broke Me Open. Jonah should have known the past would show up looking perfect. Gabriel stood in the middle of the bookstore like he belonged there. Pressed linen shirt, designer watch, that same curated smile Jonah used to think was charming. His hair was slicked back like a villain in a rom-com, and his eyes swept the room until they landed on Jonah. Then came the smile. Warm, polite, familiar in the most dangerous way. Jonah, Gabriel said, as if it hadn't been 9 months since he ghosted Jonah after 3 years of slow emotional erosion. God, it's really you. Jonah's blood turned to ice. His fingers tightened around the book in his hand, something about self-worth, ironically, and he plastered on a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Gabriel, he said carefully, didn't expect to see you here. I moved back a few weeks ago. Figured I'd find you eventually. Lucky him. I heard you left your job, Gabriel continued, voice low and smooth. That you burned out. Of course he had. Gabriel probably heard it from one of their mutual friends he never let Jonah keep. I'm doing better now, Jonah said. Gabriel tilted his head. Are you seeing anyone? It was a trap. Jonah could hear it in the pause. Gabriel wanted a no, wanted a chance to say we could try again, like Jonah hadn't spent weeks crying into takeout while Gabriel found himself in Italy with someone named Matteo. Yes, Jonah said before he could stop himself. I am. Gabriel's eyebrows lifted. Oh, and right then, like a miracle laced in leather and ink, the door jingled and Dawson walked in. Jonah didn't even think. He crossed the space between them and grabbed Dawson's hand like it was the only solid thing in the room. Hi, Jonah said, breathless. This is Dawson, my boyfriend. Dawson blinked once. Then his arm slid smoothly around Jonah's waist. His hand curled at Jonah's hip, fingers pressing through the fabric. He pulled Jonah in like they did this every day, like they'd never known anything else. Nice to meet you, Dawson said, tone calm but edged in steel. I've heard absolutely nothing about you. Gabriel's smile faltered. Jonah could have kissed Dawson on the spot. They stood there for another minute. Gabriel tried to salvage his pride with a few parting words, but Jonah barely heard them. All he could hear was his pulse, loud and unrelenting under his skin. All he could feel was Dawson's arm, warm and firm around him. When Gabriel finally left, Dawson looked down at Jonah with an arched brow. Boyfriend? It came out. Dawson didn't let go. I didn't hate it, he said. Jonah swallowed. Would it be insane if we pretended? Just for a while, there was a long pause. Then tell me what he did to you. Jonah hesitated. He loved me until I wasn't useful anymore. Then he left. Dawson's eyes darkened. Then yeah. Let's pretend. Pretending turned out to be dangerously easy. Dawson picked Jonah up on his motorcycle for dates, which somehow included picnic sandwiches eaten on the hood of his car and a horror movie marathon where Jonah ended up buried under a blanket in Dawson's lap. People saw them. That was the point. Jonah's phone buzzed with texts from people he hadn't heard from in months. Trixie posted a blurry photo of them holding hands and captioned it, "I love, love," followed by 40 heart emojis. But the thing was, none of it felt fake. Dawson didn't just act like a boyfriend. He treated Jonah like he was worth something, like he was funny and hot and important all at once. Jonah found himself laughing more, touching more, becoming someone else, or maybe just someone closer to who he'd always wanted to be. And Dawson started looking at him like he was starving. One night, they sat in Dawson's apartment, floor strewn with sketchbooks and empty takeout containers. The TV was playing some ridiculous show about cursed real estate, and Jonah was stretched out across the couch in pajama pants and a tank top, legs tucked under him. Dawson crouched beside him, sketch pen in hand. "Lift your shirt," he said, voice low. Jonah blinked. "Excuse me?" "Just a little. I want to draw something on your skin." Jonah hesitated, but only for a second. He lifted his shirt halfway up, exposing his ribs. Dawson's hand came to rest against his side, warm and steady. Then the pen touched skin. A soft drag, a slow curve. Jonah shivered. "Ticklish?" Dawson asked. "Sensitive." Dawson chuckled and kept going. He drew slowly, carefully, eyes flicking up to watch Jonah's face. The tip of the marker traced delicate lines, something floral, maybe. Jonah couldn't tell. He didn't care. All he could feel was Dawson's hand, Dawson's breath, Dawson's presence like a tide pulling him under. When Dawson finished, he leaned back, but only a little. "There," he said, voice husky. "Now you're mine." Jonah's breath caught. The air between them shifted, thickened. Dawson's gaze dropped to Jonah's mouth, and Jonah didn't look away this time. He reached out and touched Dawson's collarbone. "This still pretend?" Dawson didn't answer. He kissed him instead. It was slow, careful, then not careful at all. They made it to the bedroom in a tangle of limbs and clothing half forgotten on the hallway floor. Jonah laughed into Dawson's mouth, breathless and lightheaded. Dawson kissed his throat, his shoulder, the mark on his ribs, hands reverent. Jonah didn't feel exposed. He felt wanted. Dawson laid him down gently. They took their time, fingers tangled in hair, mouths tasting skin. The room was full of heat and breath and quiet gasps. When Dawson touched him, it was like he was discovering something sacred. Jonah arched into him, greedy for more. They moved together slowly, then faster. A rhythm built on trust and need, and something neither of them wanted to name yet. After, Jonah lay with his head on Dawson's chest, both of them glowing and quiet in the soft light. Dawson's fingers traced idle shapes on his back. Jonah closed his eyes. That didn't feel like pretending. "It wasn't," Dawson murmured. Jonah turned his face into Dawson's skin. "You feel like home." Dawson's arm tightened around him. "Then stay." Chapter 5. The Fire I Almost Let Go Out. Jonah didn't hear the knock at first. He was still tangled in the sheets, sleep-warm and sore in all the best ways. Dawson had left early to open the shop, pressing a lazy kiss to Jonah's temple before slipping out. The knock came again, sharp and insistent. Jonah dragged himself out of bed, hair a mess, Dawson's t-shirt clinging to his chest, and opened the door to a nightmare in pressed slacks. His mother's eyes scanned him from head to toe, disapproval already carved into the corners of her mouth. His father stood beside her, hands folded like a sermon was coming. "Surprise," she said, stepping past him without waiting for an invitation. They never did. It didn't take long for the interrogation to begin. They sat stiffly on the couch, ignoring Trixie's amused expression as she ducked into her room with headphones and a middle finger raised high. Jonah stood near the kitchen, arms crossed over his chest like armor. "So this is where you live now?" his mother said, lips curled like the place smelled of sin. "In a building full of graffiti and strangers with dyed hair?" "It's rent-controlled," Jonah muttered. "And Trixie's great. She looks like she charges for cuddles." Good, because I'm not giving her nearly enough. His mother gasped. His father sighed. And the tattoo, she added, eyes zeroing in on the feather just peeking out from under his sleeve. Jonah, what were you thinking? I was thinking it's my skin. You were raised better than this. Jonah flinched. His father chimed in, voice mild but cold. We just want what's best for you. You used to be so focused, so polished. Now you're... Happy? Jonah said, more forceful than he meant. There was a long silence, and then the inevitable question. Who is he? Jonah hesitated. His mother's lips thinned. I saw the photo online. You let that man mark you like an animal. Dawson is kind, Jonah said, fists clenched, and patient, and good. Jonah, his father said, this man isn't your future. That was when Jonah cracked. He stood up straighter, voice shaking. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He treats me like I matter, like I'm enough, and he swallowed. I love him. The words hit the air like lightning. His parents looked at each other, then at him. Disappointment settled in the room like dust. We'll give you space, his mother said, rising stiffly, to figure out what you want. As if he hadn't just said it. They left. They always did, eventually. Jonah didn't cry until hours later. He sat curled on the floor of the kitchen, knees pulled to his chest, fingers tracing the outline of the tattoo on his wrist. The feather felt heavy today, like a promise he couldn't keep. He didn't go to Dawson's that night, or the next. Where's your ink, boy? Mrs. Langley asked, squinting at him over her sunglasses. She was watering her herb garden in a sequined robe and slippers that lit up when she walked. Jonah shrugged, kicking at a crack in the pavement. She snorted. You break up with him? Not exactly. Then what? Jonah looked up. I told him we should take a break. Mrs. Langley narrowed her eyes. Did he do something wrong? No. Then you're an idiot, he sighed. My parents hate him. They think he's dragging me down. She huffed and disappeared into her apartment. Jonah started to walk away, but she came back and pressed something into his hand, a folded piece of paper. He opened it. It was a sketch. His face. Drawn in pencil with such quiet detail it made his chest ache. Every line, his jaw, his cheekbone, the way his hair curled at his ear was familiar, intimate. At the bottom, written in Dawson's sharp, dark script, I only draw the ones I can't forget. Jonah stopped breathing. He didn't knock on the door to Sins and Needles. He pushed it open and walked straight in, fire in his veins. The studio was quiet, the hum of music playing low. Maddox looked up from the counter and raised both brows, but said nothing. He stepped aside. Dawson was bent over a design, sleeves rolled up, dark hair falling into his eyes. His jaw clenched when he saw Jonah. He stood slowly, expression unreadable. Jonah didn't say anything. He marched up to him, grabbed the front of his shirt, and kissed him. Hard. Dawson froze for half a second, then kissed back like he'd been holding his breath for days. His arms wrapped around Jonah's waist, dragging him in. Someone whistled. Someone cheered. Jonah pulled back, panting. I'm not pretending anymore, he said, voice hoarse. I love you. Dawson's eyes softened. He reached up, cradled Jonah's face in his palm like it was the most fragile thing in the world, and kissed him again, slow, deep, full of everything he hadn't said. Then he grinned. Then come home. Jonah nodded. He already was. Chapter 6, the version where he never lets go. 1 year later, Jonah woke up to the smell of coffee, ink, and the sound of Dawson swearing softly in the kitchen. He groaned and rolled over, pressing his face into the pillow. The sheets still smelled like last night, sweat and laughter and whispered confessions. His back ached in that satisfied, sore way, and his mouth curved lazily before he could stop it. This was his life now. Their life. He sat up slowly, the morning light streaking across the room, catching on the soft gold of the firefly tattoo behind his hip. He stretched and felt the warm pull of ink across his shoulder blade. Dawson's hand sketched like it was reaching for him. Permanent. Possessive. Tender. He padded into the kitchen barefoot, wearing nothing but sleep pants and the marks Dawson left on him, inked and otherwise. Stop yelling at the spatula, Jonah mumbled. Dawson turned from the stove, hair a mess, shirtless, tattoos shifting with every movement. He held up the burnt remains of what might have once been pancakes. Happy birthday, he said with a straight face. Jonah laughed. Are those even edible? I added cinnamon. That's fancy, right? You're lucky you're hot. I'm lucky you're mine, Dawson said, and kissed him on the mouth, like they had all the time in the world. They worked together now, in a way that felt like harmony. Jonah had launched his tattoo aftercare brand 6 months ago. Balms, soaps, healing kits, all wrapped in sleek, minimalist packaging with clever names like Inked and Unbothered and Love You to Dermis. The products were stocked in half the studios in the city, but Sins and Needles had the exclusive display, front and center, with Dawson bragging about it to anyone who'd listen. Dawson still inked full-time, but on Saturdays he taught art to kids at the local rec center. Jonah had gone once and nearly cried watching a 7-year-old give Dawson a crooked drawing of a dragon labeled My Hero. "You gonna cry again?" Dawson had teased afterward. "Yes," Jonah had replied. "What are you going to do about it?" "Tattoo it on me." He wasn't joking. There was now a tiny dragon, crudely drawn and labeled My Hero, inked near Dawson's hip, right where Jonah kissed when he wanted to ruin him. Their apartment above the shop was small, loud, and chaotic. There were arguments about dishes, passive-aggressive notes on empty toilet paper rolls, movie nights that turned into debates over plot holes and popcorn-throwing wars. Jonah once found Dawson trying to tattoo himself because it was faster than waiting for Maddox and promptly banned all solo ink attempts. But they always ended up in bed, tangled together, breath sinking in the dark. Dawson never let go in his sleep. Jonah never wanted him to. On the day of Jonah's birthday, Dawson refused to let him into the studio. "Not until 8, he said, shoving Jonah toward a cab. "You're banned. Go get a massage or stare at dogs in the park." "Stare at dogs?" Jonah blinked. "That's your plan?" "You love dogs. And mystery." "You are the mystery," Jonah muttered, but he obeyed. He came back just before 8, freshly showered and still suspicious. The moment he walked in, the lights flipped on. "Surprise!" Jonah jumped. Confetti burst from something in Trixie's hands. Maddox blew a party horn aggressively. Mrs. Langley handed him a Jell-O shot and muttered, "I spiked it, darling. Drink if you're brave." The shop was decorated in black and silver streamers, fairy lights wrapped around tattoo chairs, and a banner that read, "Another year of hotness." Dawson's sketchbooks were laid out on a table like a mini gallery, pages filled with drawings of Jonah. Sleeping, smiling, frowning, all of them soft. Devoted. Jonah turned in a slow circle, stunned. "You did this?" he asked Dawson, who leaned against the counter with a lazy smile. "Of course. Why?" Dawson walked over, threading their fingers together. "Because you spent too long thinking you didn't matter. I want you to know you do. Always." Jonah felt his throat tighten. He kissed Dawson in front of everyone. Trixie whooped, Maddox gagged, Mrs. Langley refilled her shot. Dawson pulled him aside after an hour, tugging him into the back room, now dim and candlelit. "I have something else," he said, lifting his shirt slowly. Jonah blinked. Along Dawson's ribs, newly inked and still wrapped in plastic, were 5 letters in familiar handwriting. Jonah. His own signature from a note he'd once left on Dawson's pillow. "You tattooed my name?" "In your handwriting," Dawson murmured. "I warned you, didn't I?" Jonah's breath hitched. "That you're obsessed?" Dawson leaned in. "Still am." Jonah kissed him then, slow, smiling, full of everything he couldn't say with words. Later that night, they lay tangled in bed, breathless from laughter and too many kisses. Dawson's hand traced lazy circles on Jonah's thigh. Jonah pressed kisses to Dawson's jaw, whispering "mine" every time he touched a new spot. They made love again, slow teasing full of whispered pet names and little gasps. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was safe. It was everything. After, Jonah curled into Dawson's side, chest against his ribs, head on his shoulder. Their legs were a mess of skin and warmth. "I used to think you were the bad idea I'd regret," Jonah whispered. Dawson kissed his temple, lips lingering. "And now?" he murmured. Jonah looked up, eyes soft and certain. "Now I think you're the only thing that ever made me brave."